In fact, tomorrow,
everybody know I'm next.
I don't even like to say it because we'll be arrested. We need to go. I'll say it. We need to go in.
Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. 100,000 on my neck. I be running up a check. I be fucking on your ex. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. I might go fuck on your bitch. I might go fuck on your bitch. I might go bust on her lip. I might go bust on her lip. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. I be riding in a Rari. I be popping hella Molly. Yeah, 30 bricks at the lobby. 5 bitches on me, give me sloppy toppy. Everybody wanna be me. Ice water and some Fiji. Yeah, ice water and some kiwi.
We need to go into the capital. We need to go into the capital.
Like a chef. Taking off in the jet. Everybody know I flex. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. 100,000 on my neck. I be running up a check. I be fucking on your ex. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. Everybody know I'm next. I'm not gonna fuck on your bitch. I'm not gonna fuck on your bitch. I'm not gonna bust on her lip.
Hey, it's Jose Galison. You're watching No Way Jose. You can find me on No Way Jose YouTube channel, all the major audio podcatchers, and Odyssey as well. Today, you know what, for my guests, I'll do this a little lead in. I don't know if you guys, I have a little bit new backdrop items. I mean, this won't work so well if you're doing audio, but I guess I'll try to explain if you're doing audio. Let's first start off with up here. I got two things. Both are TopLobsta related. That TopLobsta just got from me recently at a. I just put these up, new backdrop items. This right here, TopLobsta got me his Action Comics #1, the first Superman appearance. So kind of a big deal for any comic book nerds. But TopLobsta got me that, and then off over here, here's my favorite. God, where my fingers are going. Off over here, that corner there, that little piece of paper there. That is. My favorite comic book panel of all time. It's from Invincible. I forget what specific volume. It's actually a really fucking dope storyline. It's where he gets in a fight. I forget the name of the character, but he gets in a fight. He's getting his ass handed to him. So literally, the guy's arms are basically ripped apart. And then something happens where his wife, who's or not wife, but his girlfriend and the mother of his child at the time, or about to be the mother of his child, gets in danger. Ends up beating the guy to death with his head because his hands basically doesn't even have hands. It's a gnarly story. I highly suggest for anyone who wants to get into comics, check out Invincible. And the last new thing I'm adding, if you guys can see right there, right here, that might look familiar for some. That's a little lectern. It's a little lectern. There was this thing not too long ago that I'm not entirely sure if we're allowed to talk about it on YouTube anymore. But there's a certain individual who went to this certain super duper important building, I guess. I guess it's super sacred or something like that. And he decided to take a podium and do little funnies, take some pictures with it. And now he's a guest on my show. He just so happened to kind of lives somewhat nearby. We've hung out already now. We're kind of best buddies now, I think. So it's it's only fair to bring him on the show. But yeah, I have the Lectern Guy. I don't know if I'm supposed to give his first name. I'll let him give that or his real name. He can say that when he comes on a second. I don't want to dox him. I'm not entirely sure. He's already been doxed by a million people already, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't know. Just being fair. But I do want to remind you guys. Oh, and let you guys know that intro. That intro came from my buddy Tim Tuttle on Twitter, so go check him out. Go follow him. But I do want to give you guys the rigmarole real quick, the rundown. I do remind you guys, I recently had my piece in Garrison magazine, piece on Kenneth Trentadue, so go check that out. I will try to remember to put that in the video description, so you guys that want that can go get that magazine. Got my work published in there, so that's fucking dope. That's something. But this right here is a paywall thing. This isn't a live stream. This isn't a 4 Pony Boys. It's just me and my old Lectern buddy. So how these work is about roughly a week or so early. I'll do a little live stream for my patrons, and they'll go public later. So if you want to have access to it earlier, you need to be a patron at patreon.com. No Way Jose 2020. Lowest level is $2. Highest level is $22 is what gets you that early stuff. So I mean, the other stuff is all just icing on top of that. Just the $2 that you really need. If you want to give me more, I'm all for it. I love money. So, but yeah, $2. Patreon.com. No Way Jose 2020 is my sponsors, and so as such, I read them off every episode. I have Mikkel Thorpe of the Expat Money Show. I have Jeremy, who's an Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/raising liberty. Follow him on Twitter at Jeremy Rhymes. And also my co-host of Tower Gang, Toad. You can go check out Tower Gang on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, all the other audio podcatchers. It's my offensive comedy podcast that me, Toad, and some others do. Highly recommend it if that's your shtick. Obviously you recommend it. I'm in it, but follow Toad at Tower Gang Toad, Zach Overacker at ZOVERACK on Twitter, Mike Degalash, and lastly, Lindsay or that Hangry Mama on TikTok, Hangry with an H. Go check out her content on TikTok. She's doing OKC content, which is pretty dope. Because I'm glad that's getting over on TikTok, because it's not really something I want to do, but I'm glad she's doing it. Also TopLobsta.com. Use Jose at checkout. That's where you can get my Yiki shirt at and all my other merch, and also other stuff TopLobsta does, other different shows merch, other non-show related artwork. Definitely go check it out. With that, let's get Lectern Dude in here. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man?
What's up? Should I just keep calling you Lectern Dude, or what do you want to be? I know your real name, but I was like, when I was typing up this stream, like making the link for this, I was like, shit, I don't know if he wants me to use his name or not.
You can call me Adam, dude. It's fine. I've been doxxed, for almost 2.5 years now. People know where I live, what I do, and where my kids go to school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wild world we live in. But I guess we can just go ahead and get right into it. For those who, it's funny, when I got this award, I actually started telling some of my normal friends, like my normie friends, with this, because I just for me, that was like, I actually legitimately was really psyched about it, because it was just like, for me, I'm like, getting that a little award thing. I guess I didn't explain what I got the award for in the little intro bit. I got it from you, but I didn't explain what for, and I guess we'll get into that a little bit. But it was so cool to me, so surreal, because I was like, for me, I'm like political nerd. I follow this stuff. I'm like, for me, I could totally see my grandkids like one day be like, be looking at history books and see like a picture of you in it or something. You know what I mean? So for me, I was like, I know you're like not like a major historical figure, but I know like enough to be like, oh, that could be a picture in a history book. And so for me, I was like, I just know like one day my grandkids could be looking at it and be like, hey, that guy gave me an award. They'd be like, shut up, grandpa. It was surreal for me. And I tell all my normie friends, and they're like, it's surprisingly like I had to do a lot of exposition for most people. It was like, for me, I'm like, that, boom, did my head immediately. Somebody's a Lectern Guy or the QAnon shaman. One of those, for me, you two are guys are like the figure, like in the
poster boys.
Poster boys. Yeah. Like, so, it just blew my mind, but it still is like super surreal, super cool. But it's just kind of funny that there are a lot of people who surprisingly don't know. I guess maybe I just underestimate how niche some of my political interests can be sometimes, even something as big as January 6th. That's how little people actually pay attention. You can say Lectern Guy, they'd be like, what?
But they all still vote.
Whereas if you actually looked at a January 6th at all, regardless of which side you fall on it, if I was like Lectern Guy, you'd be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's also kind of a testament to how many people do get grinded by the system that we're just unaware of.
Yeah, that's true. There's something to that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't know, it really did kind of blow my mind, because it's one of those things where I'm like, I mean, I've had this thing happen quite a bit, doing what I do, doing something that's like so niche, and I'm not at all someone who's like, I wouldn't say I'm like successful, I guess, in a sense. I've done decent for myself with what I've done. It's not like I'm like definitely not doing full time for this thing, but I've had some cool stuff. I've been on with Dave Smith, who was like someone who I followed his content for a long period of time. I've gone on Tim Pool. It's just like I've had some cool moments, and I tell like normal people, and I tell them these things, and they're like, they don't even know. And I just, for once, I guess with this one, I was like, oh, my normie friends will be like, oh, what? I mean, they'll probably be like, looking at me like, why are you so excited about being on the Lectern Guy or getting that from the Lectern Guy from January 6th? But I was so disappointed. I was expecting people to, because I knew the other stuff. I just keep those deep inside. If I tell my normal friend I'm going on Tim Pool, they're like, who? I'm like, you remember that like one Joe Rogan episode with him and like
exactly
Twitter guys forever ago? Like, you might know him from that. Like, aside from that, like, I don't watch that. Like, I don't know. It is weird how niche some of these things are sometimes, but it is just funny that like, I don't know. Even you didn't break the mold for normies, I guess, entirely.
Yeah. Well, it's even like so, but the same people, I can't keep up with sports stats. I don't really watch sports at all. So I'm lost at those parties where, the guys get together and they're watching football or something. I'm just disinterested, So I think it's just probably that, people just have other focuses.
Yes,
But
I know. But at the same time, though, if someone was like LeBron James, I'd be like, oh, I think I kind of know about him. I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not like a huge
yeah,
sports guy. Not saying that I guess the Lectern guy is.
he was in the
Knows.
helicopter, right? Is
Wait.
that him?
You actually, for a second, I was like, got confused. I was like, wait, are you right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think of a good parallel, but I guess LeBron James would be an awful one because that's a. But anyways, all right, let's just go ahead and get into what we're kind of dancing around here. I'll give you the chance to kind of give your story. We can go as deep into it, I guess. I mean, it's been long enough since January 6th. I think we might be able to get away with just straight up talking about it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like we could just talk about it, I guess.
Mhm.
Obviously it was really bad for the YouTube censors, super duper duper bad, like really bad. But I think we got that covered, so we can just kind of talk freely now. So, what kind of brought you to show up on January 6th, ready to take over the government?
Oh, well, all right. Not going to take him out to dinner first. That's fine. So it was a culmination of things, right? It's COVID, it's lockdowns, it's get vaccinated, carry around an ID passport if you want to get a burger. We've got mayors saying things like, "Hey, if you get it, we'll give you donuts." When we know that probably being outside and get exercise is probably the best things you can do and look at comorbidities, and you watch all this insane rhetoric that's happening. And it's not, it's a string of things. It's also, it's not just COVID. It is, obviously the election. There were a lot of questions surrounding that I don't think we'll ever get answers for. I don't. It was all of Hollywood coming out 2016 through 2020. It's all of the mainstream media. You could not find an article that was against this guy. And it's not that I'm such an avid Trump supporter, where it's like, I'm going to vote for him no matter what, has nothing to do with that. What I see is a system frantic. I see a system that's, really just grasping at any straw they can to throw shade at this dude. And I'm like, man, maybe the deep state really is being at least slowed down or hurt. But my honest opinion is there is no 4-year term or 8-year term that's really going to turn things around. This is a generational thing. It's going to take 30 years of raising a population that actually loves their countries, understands their rights, and wants to protect them. So did vote for him in 16, saw what happened. COVID, all the information is coming out, and 20 showed up, and I'm like, I think I got to vote for this guy because this is the biggest it almost felt like he was disabling a system, right? Like almost slowing it down. We didn't see any new wars start. We didn't see any new conflicts arise. People just kind of stayed in their countries. Nationalism kind of started to come up again. And it was, I don't know, I felt like we were getting back to the right side of America, like the America I want to raise my kids in. So these were all factors of showing up that day. Never been to a protest before in my life. It was the first time I've ever voted in 2020. And I showed up to a protest.
That was the first protest you ever showed up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to add to the Trump thing. I do think I feel like I've probably said this on my show before, but I feel like to some way, like him as a person, as a specific individual politician, I definitely think he has a lot of issues, and I've had a lot of problems with a lot of things he's done.
Yep.
But like so far as what he has, the influence he's had on the movement, I actually think has generally been positive, and in a weird way, I feel like it kind of got away from him too, to
Yeah.
where took on a life of its own, to where like there was a period of time, like you've probably seen, where Trump was getting like booed on stage not too long ago
For the
over
vaccines.
for
Yeah.
stuff like
Mhm.
that. And it's like those were his people. He lost his base. Like he created a base, he
Yeah.
created a certain idea, a certain vibe, and that thing kind of took off without him. So it's like it's almost like when I'm analyzing that phenomenon, I have to differentiate between Trump the politician and the influence he's had in
Sure.
a sense, because I don't really I like what Trump has been for it, but like so far as an individual politician, I don't care. Like, I mean, I do like some of the energy he's had recently. It's been really cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I think like
We could talk
politically
about
he's
bump
made
stock
awful
bans.
choices. Yeah,
Bump
stock
stock
bans.
bans. We
Yeah,
can talk about his gun policy. Not a big fan of it. Like there's his hiring practices. Like we can go on and on about all the mistakes that he made. Like, and I can fill a whole interview with this. And I think to your point, like he did birth something, right? But during 16, Bernie Sanders kind of did the same thing. And they were kind of very juxtaposed to each other, right? Trump is more of the establishment needs to be dismantled. And Bernie was the establishment needs to be built up properly. And I think both parties, you know, that were more center were leaning in that direction, right? So your libertarians and your classical liberals, right? They were both leaning towards like a Sanders and Trump ticket. But if Trump birthed this thing, you know, the goal of any parent is, you know, to get that bird out of your nest to make it fly on its own. And I think that if he did birth this America First, you know, concept, you know, and it may just be, you know, Tea Party 2.0, maybe it's time that we do move forward with it, you know, because I'm not sure if we need 80-year-old presidents. I don't think it's a great idea. You know, I definitely think he has more energy and sass than Biden does. I definitely think he's not, you know, having to change his pants in the Vatican. But I just wonder if it's the right way forward sometimes.
I do think while you were talking, it made me think that I don't even know if we can really attribute a ton of this to Trump. I really feel like he was just kind of what was called for at that like that was the energy in the room, and that he was that thing that filled that void at that
Sure.
time. That was there was a essentially certain incentives have been put into place, and something capitalize on those incentives, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I think what I'm getting at is like at the time that he I feel like politics had gotten stale, gotten predictable, so it was only made sense that someone bombastic like him came in, an outsider that threw things off. And it's not to say that like he specifically any of his policies or whatever, or even that it was particularly him. It's that just that outsider outlaw vibe, as Sam Tripoli is known to say, the Outlaws. That was kind of what it was, I think, as opposed to any specific policies or person. Some people get caught up in like the cult of Trump, and it's like I don't even think it's like necessarily the cult of Trump. It's more just like that energy that he filled, that spark he ignited in people to were like, hey, like, you know, look, this thing can be fucked with. Like,
predictability is a great word for it.
Yes.
Because I mean, what have we had? We've had the same thing, you know, when I think, God, there's so much to unpack there. I think with the advent of social media, the information we can share so rapidly, we have independent journalism that is just, it is on an exponential growth path right now. And you can literally go read about stories before the mainstream media and the CIA has an opportunity to correct the stories and tell you what to believe. Obama just had an interview, I think, a few weeks ago. We were talking about independent media is what's ruining the country. He said we used to have like 3 stations and that was the news, and we all agreed on the main narrative. And it's like, no, that was the problem. And the novelty, right? The predictability of it all is what made people feel like, man, am I the only person taking crazy pills, or am I being lied to on a regular basis? And I think Trump was just that person where it's like, hey, I've got a bunch of money and a big voice and a platform, and I can get through all of these campaign finance laws and actually bid for this thing, and I'll say the thing you want to say. Because at the end of it, is a narcissist. Like, he loves being loved. He definitely wants the power. These are things that we can definitely admit. But I mean, any studies on politicians, like narcissism is the key trait they all share. So I won't attribute the one thing to him and not to everyone else.
He was a matrix breaking moment. I think that's kind of what it was. And I think there were other matrix breaking moments occurring at the same time. They kind of that same basic idea, kind of like you brought up into independent media, but it's the idea, as silly as it may sound, like say something with Trump, like the idea of like, people will be like, hey, people used to think, hey, you can't go up on the debate stage and accuse your political opponent of father of killing JFK. You can't go up on the political stage and fucking and tell people, like, allude to the size of your wiener. You can't go on a political stage and call your political opponents to their face wife fat. And it's like, yeah, okay, like you used to think you can't, but in reality you can. And it's the same idea with independent media. It's like, okay, we have these established figures churning out these stories, but at the end of the day, like, if you're a little guy, like, it's like, well, what can I do? I don't. You can put out a story. You can share this tweet. You could do this. You can do stuff. And it's like this idea of people like, I think people are kind of like realizing like, oh, I can just do this shit. And you can, there's actually, the more people start doing shit, the more it like catches on, if that makes sense,
Yeah. Well, campaigns have been putting those commercials out forever, right? It's never the person who's saying it. It's always the commercial on TV, right? And these are these people that are getting funded with your donations to their campaigns, right? But it's never the politician that says it, right? They have to be formal because, you have to have this air about you if you're going to lead a country. And I think that people were like, they wanted someone who just talked like they did, someone they can actually relate to, and maybe we're just tired of polished. Maybe we're all really, really, really exhausted. And it's like, look, we're at the end of our conversation or our argument, and we really just want to know, can we reconcile at the end of this, or are we just done arguing? We got to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah. No, it's I think there's some like respectability thing that comes in there we've broken the mold there. Like you look at, I mean, hell, anyone who's familiar with like my other show, Tower Gang, and then like some of the breaks I've had, and then now like bring that to like a higher level. Like look at somebody like Dave Smith, and then look at the other show he has. This other show is Legion of Skanks, and then you look at the breaks, like the places that he's gone, obviously way higher than me, and like the things that he's made happen. Or created like influence. Like his influence has outsized the establishment, and he is not part of this respectability thing. And the same thing to me. Like I know it sounds silly, but I've already in a few episodes now broke down the metrics or kind of use this example of Tubin, who was an individual who wrote a book on Oklahoma City bombing just recently, who was either still is or currently or previously was an anchor for CNN or a contributor or something like that.
Was this the Zoom guy?
Yeah, Zoom guy.
This was the Zoom guy. Yeah.
Dude has like dude has like 250,000 followers, and like my little 5,000 follower account, like with my OKC content, whenever I do like OKC tweets, they blow his away. And and we're talking about the difference between me being like, let me tell you about Andreas Strassmeyer in a tweet, and not even like a crazy thread or something, just a quick little factoid. And then something like his, like a literal announcement of him going an appearance on CNN with like Anderson Cooper to promote his book that he spent months on. And I'll get like multiple times more of engagement than him and people caring.
Yes.
So it's like, that is it right there. No one gives a shit. Like this is like, it's that invincible meme of like people were like look what they have to do to mimic a fraction of our power. Like like all that money you were talking about, those money games they play, like that is like what upholds that. Like I'm sure there's some CIA cutout that's probably going to pay Tubin hundreds of thousands of dollars and buy a bunch of books. But like it's like if you look at on the ground engagement, it's kind of like it's completely artificial.
The engagement's not real. The engagement is from Twitter 1.0. All these legacy blue checks that came through, and they're like, oh, I'm super important. And I've even found this on conservative pages, right? Like, I mean, I'm looking at conservative pages that have like north of 100,000 followers. I get more engagement than them. And I haven't broken 10,000 yet. And I don't know if it's real. I don't know if the conservative side of it or the liberal side of it, if it's just been kind of navigated to where, well, we have to have a percentage of conservatives, otherwise we can't attract conservatives to the platform. So let's find some vanilla, milquetoast people that'll just not post too insane things, and we'll kind of go along with well, I don't want my Twitter feed, suspended, so we'll let them just exist. But it's a Twitter 1.0 people that don't really have engagement anymore. But I know my following are savages. They are savages. They are on top of everything. They share everything. They comment everywhere. And I've noticed the same thing for your following as well.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been lucky with the following I've built up, but it's just weird. It's just surreal. Like if you look at like the outsized influence you can have as just some dude. Like Tubin is a guy who's probably making hundreds of thousands of dollars doing what he does, and I make a couple $100 a month off this. So
Yeah, but we should talk about that. But I'm telling you, so I had no idea who you were months ago. And then I saw you posted something about OKC, and I was very apolitical growing up. I got a bunch of kids, started when I was 21 years old. I got 5 now. So I haven't had time to really understand politics. You know, when I saw 9/11 happen, I was like, oh, we definitely need the TSA and start a 20-year war, you know, and definitely take my rights because I don't know anything, right? So I saw your stuff and I'm like, man, I think I want to learn more about history, you know, maybe at least history through the lens of people who have actually spent time investigating it. So I started your series, OKC, and at the end of it, I thought to myself, this guy has to have a lectern because what you are doing is speaking for the dead. You are speaking for the martyred. You are speaking for people that the government just got rid of, that don't have a voice anymore. And they will never have a voice unless people like you speak up and commit time to it. So you are literally speaking for the dead, and that is why you have one.
Yeah.
And it's the criteria for getting one. It's different for each person, but you have earned that because of that.
Well, I appreciate that. You should definitely. I always try to pass off all credit as much as I can to Richard Booth because I really lucked up at getting him my expert. He's phenomenal. But yeah, no, it definitely was for me. It also was like it was a learning experience, and it also was like an important thing for me. Like it really was from the moment I watched that Yiki video. I was like, whoa. Like holy crap, and it already like dragged me in emotionally, and then the more I dug into, the more I was like, oh my god, there's more. Like it's you're like, oh Jesus, like what, like, and you're
Every
like
episode,
and once you start digging through like the facts, like I've actually gotten to the point where like I'm regularly like just for like, oh yeah, this little thing, like I'm exploring this little angle, and then I'll go over because like what we plug every episode on that libertarianinstitute.org/OKC, it says OKC archive. It literally is like a Google for it. You can just go to this little search bar, type in, I'll be like, oh crap, what is, I'll forget like something. Cause now I've gotten to the point where I'm like regularly going on shows and talking about this. So I'm like, and I'm not the expert. So I have to make sure I stay sharp. I'm like, I'm pretty usually well immersed in OKC stuff just to keep it in there because I'm not the expert. I mean, I've read some books, I've done a series, but it's like everyone wants me coming on and talk about it. I'm like, you know, it's like almost like an expert topic. So for me to do it, I'm like, I almost feel like I got to make sure I'm really doing it good because I feel like people like almost assume I'm an expert. I always try to really like explicitly be like, I'm not the expert. Like, but
I just play one online. Yeah.
Well, I don't even try to play one. It's just I know people assume like, or they'll like be like, oh, you're coming on and talk about this, but it's like there are a lot of technical details, a lot of stuff. So I want to make sure no one's like, hey, you're the expert. I'm like, I'm trying. I'm working my best to get there. I forgot like what my point was about the expert thing, but yeah, I've been like kind of fuck. I had a whole point. I lost it. What was I even leaning to? I had a whole point. God damn it.
Oh, it's getting. I talked about getting the lecterns and things like that. You want to be sharp, but
yeah. Oh, damn it. I had a whole point, but yeah, no, I've been doing my best to try to stay on top of that content. You know, keep in mind. Damn it, I had a fucking point and I lost it completely.
I get this. People want me to be an expert on January 6th. I'm supposed to know all of these cases in every detail, and it's like, look, I saw what I saw. I experienced what I experienced. Then, honestly, the shit that they put me through, I try not to think about it most days. Because if I'm writing a book right now, I'm probably 70% done. And I can tell you that in the beginning, writing that book, dude, it really freaking messed with me because I had to relive those moments every step of like every word that went on the paper, you know. I started drinking a bunch more, got really depressed and stuff. So I'm through that part now, which is nice. Now I just got to write about prison, which was actually not a bad time. So that should be a lot easier.
Oh, so you're currently working on a book on this? How
I am.
Do you have any sort of timeline at all, or are you just kind of really? I mean, this is probably your first book, I'm assuming. So you're probably just very much like, I don't know what I'm doing.
So I'm actually a pretty good writer. It's something that I've always been passionate about. I'm decent at it. Went to college, so I know how to research and cite and all these things. But the book is probably about 230 pages deep so far. and it covers everything from who I am, why I showed up, what happened the day before. Saw Alex Jones speak in the park. I saw Owen Schroyer burn like a BLM flag on the sidewalk. Like I felt like I was Forrest Gump walking through history.
I mean, you kind of were. It very was Forrest Gumpy. Although I guess there's a little bit of a intentionality to it. It's more mischievous than a Forrest Gump, but and that's kind of what makes it endearing as well. But I guess we've been pussyfooting around it a little bit. Let's just straight up say what did you do? How do we explain the actions that you took? Because it's weird. To some people, you're almost like this evil figure, but it's like it's hard. It was that the thing about you that broke the mold of it is that really it was hard to look at you as an evil figure, or because it was like we had the poster boy or some of the pictures that came out that they were using as propaganda to be like, look how evil it is. But you were almost like the counter propaganda to where it was like, look at this guy, this is hilarious. And it's like there were some people who were trying to like put it out there to be like, oh my god, look how disrespectful they're being. And it's like it didn't work though, because it was people were like, shut the fuck up.
Oh yeah.
So it's like you were almost like this counter propaganda. So I guess there were like people who did kind of allude to that, like it's almost became this thing in their head of like what you did. Like some people like you stole the lectern, you did this, you did that. Like what even happened in relation to lectern? Because it's my understanding it wasn't much, but it was made out to be a lot, and you ended up doing a lot of time for it. So.
Yeah, we can fast forward to that moment. There was stuff leading up to it. We can, circle back.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we can circle back, but like it's just to set who the hell you are for people. But yeah.
The lectern was sitting out in the open. So the story surrounding it was that I broke into a room, that I took this thing, and I left the Capitol with it. Someone made an eBay post selling it on eBay. It actually sold for almost $100,000 at the end before the post was taken down. We had Jimmy Kimmel going on his talk show saying that I stole it. Like, so the rhetoric is out there that I'm this thief, that I stole, that I broke into an office, took this thing, and flew home with it. Everything surrounding that is a lie. This thing was sitting out in the open under like a staircase. Like there's no vestibule, there's no closed door. It's just sitting out in the open. And I'm in the rotunda and I think to myself, man, that's a great prop for a photo. Like you're in the Capitol and like there's a lectern right there. I'm going to bring it to the center of the room. I'll have someone take my picture because we're like, a selfie world these days. I'll put it on my socials and maybe I get like 5 more followers. And that's it. I took it out to the middle of the room, about 20 yards. I gave a short speech. There was some photographers that were there. It turns out it was Getty Images. They were taking my pictures, so I smiled and waved because I'm a polite person. I put it in the middle of the room. I gave a speech, and I left it there. That was my entire interaction with the piece of furniture. I moved it 20 yards, but I was charged with felony theft because it was supposedly worth over $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, probably was. I mean, it was fancy looking.
I'm a carpenter.
But yeah. I mean, whether it was really legitimately worth it, but I mean, you know how these items go. They inflate a little bit for the. I mean, you can't be having a sub $1,000 lectern, for the speaker.
Well, most furniture that's built for these federal offices are built by prisoners, though. So we're talking about labor costs and supply costs. They were actually debating whether it had historical significance, so it was priceless, which means it's difficult to say it's a felony, or it's not a historical item, so we have to put a number on it. So they chose the latter.
So they got you. So you moved. You said you only moved it like a little bit. So, but they tried to get you for felony theft, even though you technically didn't take it. You just moved it.
Yeah. They said it's conversion of use. So it's like if your car was sitting in your driveway and your keys were in it, and I turned it on for a prank, and then I parked it like one driveway down, that's technically theft.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you wrote the law like that, so I guess sure.
Yep. Well, this is where libertarian legal theory comes in, because that becomes nonsensical. Because the whole idea of criminal justice is to it's all about property rights. So the idea would be if someone stole something from you, the correct path to become whole again would to be for them to make you whole again. And if say it was someone stole $20 from you, it would give you $20 back. And obviously whatever troubles you went through in the process of having to get, work to get your property back, they would have to cover in the whole idea of recompense. So there's like the idea that like you're going to do literal time, which is just punishment for an item that someone actually got back. Like at best,
but whose property is it? This is the question I always have, because it doesn't belong to any Speaker of the House, because it's a revolving position, right? So the speakers don't technically own these things. And so the next step is, well, it belongs to the federal government. Well, who owns the federal government? I always assumed it was the people, that it's all of our taxes that pay for the government. So all of the property the government owns is actually the citizens' property. So how can I steal something that technically belongs to me if we're really being like honest about it?
Yeah, I think at best they might have a case if we had a proper legal world, like a proper legal system in this country. I think at best they may have been able to charge you with like $5-10 for the amount of time that it took one of their employees to move it back from the one place to the other. And at that point, like, who's really going to go to court over like $5-10?
Oh, the federal government.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this lectern is people don't know these things because the only reason you know about me is because my photo, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't know about this piece of furniture, right? So someone else moved it somewhere else. They found it in the red corridor literally hours later, and they wheeled it out. There was a big ceremony. So someone else also moved it. No one's been charged with moving the furniture but me. On top of this, someone actually stole the microphones off the damn thing. Do you know what he had? He had a fine for it, and he was asked to bring them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, checks out.
Yeah. I went to prison for 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah. You, yes. Well, I mean, that's because you took a picture. That's because you took a picture.
I mean, take the picture. Someone else took the picture.
I mean, it obviously was just punishment for the appearance that you like. Now, had there been no picture, say you had even taken an item or something, a small item like that individual, yeah, probably been the same boat. Just, give it back, small fine.
Yep.
Whatever. You mentioned you had some other stuff that you felt you wanted to bring up that led up to it. Feel free to go wherever you want with that. I'm not sure what specifically you're referring to. There's a lot of stuff happened on January 6th, but we can go wherever you want with that.
Well, so I get this question a lot where and my judge brought this up. When I first approached the Capitol building, there were people that were, fighting with cops, and cops were fighting with people. Like we've all seen the videos. And a lot of people like to look at the Tucker Carlson stuff and say, well, no, it was all peaceful. But you have to consider the left has only seen a handful of videos and said this is the only thing that happened. And the right is only looking at one set of videos and saying only these things happened. And I try to be as honest as possible. Both things happened. Both things happened. The reality is that both things happened. 95% of the people that were in the building were nonviolent. We weren't doing shits, like we were walking around taking photos. But if you look at the people who have had the harshest sentences, it's the people who were in the building, not outside the building, who were acting crazy. And I'm a nonviolent person. Like I do jujitsu, so you can argue maybe I do like violence a little bit, but I don't like hurting people, So when I showed up and I saw these things happen, like, happening off to the distance, I'm like, well, I'm not a part of that. That's not what I'm here to do. So I left the group that was doing that and walked inside through some open doors, and they want to blanket statement that everyone there was a rioter. Everyone there was a violent, rioter and insurrectionist, all these things. And what I try to do is try to find the middle ground. I try to find the kink in the armor for the left. And I say this, we can talk about BLM for a minute, right? We remember the Summer of Love. We remember, the multiple riots, the 30 plus people that died, like, cops that were, being firebombed and all these things. And I say this, BLM did have a bunch of riots, but it doesn't mean everyone who showed up to a BLM protester is a rioter, right? It means that maybe 5% of the people that were at those riots were rioting. Maybe 10. We don't know because the feds never investigated meaningfully, right? They didn't ask Google for locations. They didn't ping cell phones. They weren't breaking down people's doors in different states. That's not what happened. We'll never know. But if I can give the same grace to a group of people who showed up to protest, whether I agree with their protest or not, grace enough to say, listen, I'm sure most of you were just there to protest because you feel like you were wronged. And if I want to be an actual person who believes in constitutional rights, you can protest, you can show up to have your voice, you can assemble, then I have to give those people grace. I want to know why we're also not being given grace. And that is my biggest grievance that I have through this.
I mean, I think we know the answer why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where we get into some of the glowy glow stuff, which I am kind of interested. Did any of, I guess there's kind of two questions here. Like, what was your rough vibe of kind of deep state stuff, and has your eyes opened more since? Like, what was your perspective before all this in that kind of vein of things, and has it changed since? And then also, I'm just kind of curious if that's the kind of what led you to my content, because I'm sure you know now after going through my OKC playlist that like that is in my head is kind of like the focal point of like the modern day fuckery when it comes to glowy stuff. It's such a good a good starting point to kind of web out to like the Whitmer stuff, to like, understanding the PatCon and kind of like, the things like Patriot Front and like, January 6th and how the fucking
the whistleblower that came out last week saying that they were looking for 11,000 hours worth of video, but they can't give it to him because they implicate too many FBI agents. Yeah. I mean, look, I will say this, two things. One, on the way marching to the Capitol, or the night before, we saw National Guard everywhere, right? They were already there. They're sitting out there with their APCs and they're hanging out because they've been called to be there. I remember marching to the Capitol, walking, to the Capitol with a group of people.
Goose stepping to the Capitol.
Yeah, exactly. Always arms outstretched, It's very sore that
very
day.
loudly.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember texting my jiu-jitsu coach, Sonny, and I was like, I wonder if they're going to be using, riot rounds or live ammunition, because we're marching to this place and I can assume they're going to, be protecting it with all fervence because, it's so sacred or what have you. And that's what I honestly believe to come to. I believe we would show up there. There would be these lines of people in front of us like, hey, it's the Capitol. Shout all you want. Hold your signs, but you'll get tired. Go get a hot dog. Go home. And it's not what I saw. And I was confused when I approached the building because I saw maybe like 30 cops outside. And my thought is, why? Like, why not more? Inside the building, it took me almost 20 minutes to find the first police officer, right, that was in that building. And the only interaction I had with the cops there that day is I asked a police officer, hey, how do I leave? I don't know where I am. And that body cam footage has still not been released. It should be. It should be, because it would show you my temperament. But as far as when did I start waking up, I think it was through all of this.
Okay.
I think it was I always believed that, my country has my back. We're all citizens. And I was kind of this mindset where maybe we're not supposed to know everything. Maybe they need their secrets, because if it got leaked, internationally, it would be the end of our country.
Yeah.
And I remember having these conversations when, during the election, in 2020, when we saw, the graphs and things like that, and questions started arousing. And I had a lot of people were saying, like, we just need to arrest these people. It's treason. We need to, consider what we used to do with treasonous and do those things. And I'm like, well, the issue is you start arresting some of these very high people, and then all the dominoes start falling down behind them. And then what you yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
that's the idea.
So at the time, I thought I was being the voice of reason, where I was like, well, listen, like, if you start doing that, then the country starts falling apart. Who's going to be in charge of things? Who's going to run things? China can come in, run us all over. And maybe there's just necessary evil at the top. We don't understand all the working parts of it. That's literally how I believed in 2020. Even going through all of things that I thought were man, this is not right. They really are doing things that we have questions for. And instead of having the questions answered, they are arresting people instead. So I go through all of my things. I sat down with the feds for 12, 13 hours across 2 proffers. Turns out I don't know shit about shit because I'm just a normal dude raising kids. They didn't give me any credit for sitting down doing proffers. They said, well, you couldn't offer us anything, so we're not going to give you any credit for doing that. But we're definitely letting everyone know you talk to us so that way people think, you're a CI or something. And thankfully, they didn't give me credit because when you go to prison, you don't want that credit on your paperwork. They will find out, and they are not very friendly to you.
Yeah, I would surmise so. But go on.
Yeah. So after going through this whole process, being grinded up by the system, I got out of prison, and my wife picked me up, saw my kids. We had a great, reunion back at the house, and I talked to my wife, and I said, "Listen, I'm at a segue here. I'm an impasse. I can either, you know, shut the fuck up and, get on with living with my family or speak about this. And if I'm going to speak about it, I need to be speaking in truth, like facts. I need to understand exactly who it is I'm going against, who it is I want to talk about. And I think it was at that moment where I was like, I'm going to start listening to history, like not the history that you learn in public schools, but the history that is difficult to find, the history that is talked about behind closed doors. So I've been kind of on a tear, just walking backwards, I'm trying to make it back to Jekyll Island at some point. So I'm kind of walking backwards and just trying to understand.
It's wild the way the webs go once you start following them. I really could, like, just with OKC, like, I don't know, like I already mentioned the Michigan stuff, and it ties into MK Ultra, it ties into, you can bring into COINTELPRO, like or COINTEL, and it's like it just is like. And then that you can get into weird, like Fed infiltrating like weird religious groups when you get to the outskirts, and like it just gets so nuts. And once you start realizing like the way that these shadowy groups maintain control or exert their influence, is just like, it's weird, and it makes you reevaluate history and be like say something like as simple as say they said that, hey, there was a big white nationalist or white power movement in the 90s. Like, that's a good example in Oklahoma City bombing. And then once you start digging into these and realizing how many, like even looking at it from a modern day thing, saying how many groups are infiltrated by feds, and then you're like, you assume that might be like a modern day thing. Then you start looking at something like OKC, you realize, oh, they were doing a lot of that same stuff already. You don't know how infiltrated it was, but once you start looking, you're like, I see a lot of infiltration, and then you'll see, oh well, now they've also infiltrated this other thing that also influences this thing, and you're like, how much of this is real, and how much is it just like a distortion of reality, to where you're like, and now we just, in the history books, you go, oh yeah, there was a really burgeoning white power movement in the early 90s, and you're like, and it's just a given, and that's just a narrative that builds upon itself, and you're just like in the damage that causes. And now you get to modern day where politicians will say shit like white supremacist domestic terrorists is our biggest thing we have to worry about, and you're like, who? Where? What is this thing? And then you see things like Patriot Front, and you go, they're like right there. And you're and then it makes you reevaluate history. Like, have they just gotten worse at this? Like, go on.
What is the concept where everyone misremembers it collectively? There's a term for this.
Oh crap!
I would know this an hour ago.
I know. I literally was just listening to a podcast they were talking about the other day. It's like the idea of like the Berenstein or Berenstain.
Yeah. Well, it's sherbet ice cream, right? Yeah. Everyone says sherbet. It's actually sherbet. There's no NR. It's sherbet, right? But everyone remembers it to be sherbet. Everyone pronounces sherbet. We collectively remember things the way that I guess that we were told to remember things. And I think that public school might be the center of all of this. I really, really, really do.
Collective consciousness,
It goes back to that. It's not a president for 4 years that's going to save us. It is raising a 30-year generation that understands truth. And I have this also goes back to like, how far do you spider web? I know, like, I have a brand that was kind of thrust upon me, right?
Mandela effect. Mandela effect. Sorry.
Mandela. It is
I had
Mandela.
to say it.
Yeah,
It hit
that's
me.
it.
Like,
It's
because
Mandela.
I know because
Yeah.
there's Nelson Mandela. People used to think Nelson Mandela was dead when in fact he was still alive.
Yeah.
Also, just so people know, Nelson Mandela was actually a giant piece of shit. But go on.
Yeah, we can definitely go into that. So there is this brand that's been kind of thrust upon me where I'm supposed to be this, I am, but I'm supposed to be this wholesome guy that's just jovial and humorous and things. And I wonder sometimes if I keep rabbit holing, will it make me one of these people that there's this concept in the Bible where it talks about, new believers, they need milk. They can't chew solid foods like babies, right? Like babies, you need to start them on a very like liquid diet, and then start introducing like things upon things. And I wonder, if I start delving too deeply, right, and start making that my brand, will I lose this group of people that may just be the introduction to this? And it goes, I mean, it goes to the point that I think that right now that there's this, I think the Conservative Party is scooping up a lot of libertarians because the Overton window has shifted so much, right? And we've also kind of grown culturally to where we don't really care about things we cared about in the 90s. So conservatives changed. And I think that there are so many battlefronts that are available for so many levels of people that can either feed you milk that you need or baby food or start working on solid foods. We need as many generals on the field as possible. So it's important that we have many different brands of people that are talking about things, but we also need to have a unified collection, like we're all together promoting this things where it's like, look, no, just follow this thing, and then you'll get to the point where you realize that it's not about voting for a party, it's about voting for your rights. It's about voting for your freedom.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I was
It's a
thinking
lot.
about that.
Yeah.
I
It's
was
a lot.
following it, and then the voting threw me for a loop because I like immediately. It's like I was thinking about something else. Then you're like, oh well, voting. I was like, oh fuck, that threw me off. No, because I was thinking that in terms of like kind of how we go about supporting. People who are saying certain things. It just threw me off when it took to a political. Because like in my head, I was like, that just kind of happens naturally. Like that. What this effect that happens is like. I generally do my best to try to boost people that I like and that I think do good work. And most of those people tend to do the same. It's like this, like, the rising tide raises all ships. And I'm very much like I forget the term for it. It's like the mindset. Like, because a lot of people will be like, say, for example, will be protective. Like, for example, with me, like with my show, like, with my OKC stuff, you would think like maybe I would be protective of like Richard Booth, and I wouldn't want to like share him around and be like, hey, you should interview him. But like, if anything, I'm the complete opposite. Like obviously it's cool if I get on a show or something, but like
Sure.
I've many times I've recommended like for certain people, like if you want to talk to him, he will be great. He is he's a genius when it comes to stuff. And so like the idea being like I'm putting that energy out in the world, and like I'm not necessarily like waiting to collect it back either, but it just naturally does. Because it's like you're kind of creating this network of people just by the simple acts like that and how you interact socially. Like I'm putting forward this guy that's like great on this one topic that I'm interested in, and it kind of builds up this thing, like roughly this topic I'm interested overall, which obviously I'm involved in that topic, so the growth of that topic in general is good for me. Like you know what I mean? Like it's the same idea where then like I find other things I'm interested in, I try to boost their voices, and they usually tend to try to do the same for me. It's not this thing anyone that's like said, it's just this, so it's just like I'm just basically right now I'm just autistically describing what like socializing is. Like that,
exactly.
like that's all that is. It's just like, hey, maybe just find people you like, and if they're cool and they're good people, support them. And if you're operating with large audiences, I think people start picking up on that, and then you build up audiences as you go, and like it's just this natural effect, and then it just kind of becomes like you see where people like me have an outsized influence to literal fucking CNN contributors.
But it's we also finally have a space where we can communicate, right?
Yeah.
Like we've been throttled for I don't know, since the birth of mainstream media, you know? And I think when social media first came out, you look at the 4chan, you look at, Reddit, things like this, like people were talking behind the scenes, promoting ideas. And not that everything on 4chan and Reddit should be taken to heart, especially these days, but it's an opportunity to speak and share ideas. And
Mhm.
I definitely think that I don't know where Twitter is going to go with this new hire. I'm reluctant, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna keep talking while I can, you know?
Yeah.
But it's I think it's a space that we can share ideas and connect with people, and I think we need to promote that and support that all the way. When
Yeah.
I talked about the voting thing, I didn't mean like, just for
Yeah.
the presidency. I mean like locally. If it's
Mhm.
a 30-year push, you need to be so consciously aware of your neighbors, of the people you see at the grocery store, your teachers, like the people you barbecue with. These are the people you need to be having conversations with. These are the people you should be feeding milk to. These are the people where it's like, oh, did you see this thing? That's weird, isn't it? Right? And then plant a seed. Plant a seed, because locally is how you win nationally, and it takes 30 years for that oak to take hold and to grow into something that is the idea that most centrists want, but
Yeah.
it's going to take time.
Yeah, I think yeah, you're in a certain sense locally. It doesn't even necessarily have to be politically, but I guess it works out that way as well. Like, I mean, we haven't talked particularly about my politics. I'm not a huge fan of voting in general, but if you're gonna do it, the more local, the better.
Yes, yes.
So, like, that's kind of my perspective. So I agree. But I also think like it's kind of like just make yourself better as well.
Mhm.
Because if you have certain ideas, those ideas coming from a better package, whether it be appearance, whether it be your financial situation or
Sure,
your social presentation or whatever, those
sure.
are all and that's in a sense is like kind of the hyper local is a sense because you're like down to you. I think that's really like
Mhm.
you're saying that's what matters the most. So like do your best to make something of yourself. You don't have to necessarily always be pushing some specific concept, but just the idea if you're someone that has like people can look at you and be like, well, they have a beautiful family, they have a nice life, they're doing well, they seem to have their head on straight, and they also have these set of ideas. It just
Mhm.
kind of naturally it just kind of gives it an air of respectability, real respectability, not the fake respectability that we are kind of alluding to with this like phenomena of Trump as juxtaposed to the like the elite or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like people kind of are learning to be able to identify their own what they in their
Yeah.
own arbitrary way consider respectable or important you
Well,
know
we've Mandela effect. We consider that these people that we vote in, that we're giving them power. And I grew up in church, so I use a lot of scripture and things like that. But Moses got to a point to where he couldn't manage the amount of people underneath him, so he had to delegate, right? And it's not that we should be voting people into power. That's where we're getting it wrong. We need delegators. At some point, we do need people to delegate things to be done. And they're delegating to the people, right? It's not that we should be giving them power. We should be allowing them to delegate positions down to people that are responsible, the best hires for a job. Because I do believe that a strong community makes a great neighborhood to live in. It makes a great place to raise kids. You do definitely need people that are not in charge, but can delegate well and understand who's the best person for the job. So we got to stop understanding voting as, well, I want this person to be in power. No, that means you're giving up your power. You have to change your mindset on that. We need to vote people who delegate well.
yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. I don't want to get sidetracked in a whole because I'm like I could keep going. We could talk about how I prefer a king to a democracy, but
Well, I tell you what, come over for a brisket with the kids, and we'll chat for hours. It'll be fun.
yeah, we definitely do need to set something up. We need to hang out sometime. I'm a
Yeah.
super duper duper busy guy, but every now and then we get I might be able to figure something out.
Yeah.
We were talking about doing some sort of tower gang. I guess it's a little bit of a preview for the fans out there. We were talking about doing some sort of tower gang, something or other in like July or August. So we'll see. And that would probably be at TopLobsta's house, which is just like a couple hours from me and you.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
yeah. And there'll probably be in the future more events at TopLobsta's house. Maybe at some point, maybe I'll start doing them at my place because I have a decent setup in my place. I have a couple acres. I have an exterior building that if I tied it up would be a good little party spot. So I don't know. Between the two of us, we definitely can start doing stuff like that. And we got enough people around here, unless they take Clint from us, because I don't know if you've been hearing with the Tim Pool stuff going on with Clint. How they're talking about it sounds like it's basically a done deal. It seems like that he's going to be doing Poker with the Boys with Tim Pool, which is like I think it's supposed to be like a poker show. I don't know. We don't even know really the specifics and all this stuff. But
I was up at the compound a couple of weeks ago. I don't gamble at all. It's like I have vices, but that's one I don't want to take up.
The Tim Pool one, you went up there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And God, I don't want to share the story too much.
I mean, if you don't feel comfortable sharing,
no, I can dance around it. So I'm up there and I'm dropping off some lecterns for some people. Two of his writers, because
is it Bert, and who else?
Yeah, it was. I'm not gonna say their names because I'm just.
Okay.
You know,
maybe that's fine.
Yeah,
Bert,
people,
someone else.
People got them.
Bert said it and straight up said it on there. No, actually, it was. Crap. No, I think it was the other guy. Crap. I might be mixing, conflating some people. But I don't know. I think the ones you're talking about probably wouldn't care, but whatever. We don't say their name. It doesn't matter. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I brought up 4 lecterns and I wanted to drop them off the compound because I'm in DC. I don't want to be walking around with them. So I dropped them off and stuff. And I get there and I think it's G Prime and Cashman and Pool is sitting there and they're playing poker. It's like, oh, Lectern Guy, you play cards? And I'm like, I don't play poker, And it's because I've got, my family has there's one of my people almost ruined his life over the whole thing. So I don't get involved with it. I have an active personality. So if I see something I might enjoy, I'm like, I'm not going to do it, And it's just it's being cognizant of my my disposition.
So. I've played poker a few times. I just suck at it. I don't know. I never really can get. I'm like, okay, I can do it for fun. I also am like, I'm the kind of person that I don't like gambling because it's my autistic brain.
I get anxious.
It's not even an anxious thing. It's just like I know I'm like have the cognizance to know like my skill level and be like, why would I just want to lose money? Like statistically, I'm gonna lose. And like maybe if I got really amazing at it, but it's like I don't think like the amount of time I need to put in to get good is really worth it. The amount of money I'm gonna make off this. So it's like I don't. For me, like the entry level, it's like I never got into gambling and at all, unless it's something like say it was some like a thing like say I don't know, like I'm a really good soccer player. It was like
sure.
Although I guess like one-on-ones doesn't make sense. But like say like there was like you could do one-on-ones with people and you'd be like, but for money. No, that sure, okay. No, like I could be like, I have an idea. I know my skill level. I'm really good at it. I'm
sure.
Like, I know I stand to make some money. But if it's just like shit, like regular normal gambling, like I just the idea of gambling, the idea that like I know the trick here is for me to lose money. Like I'm not stupid. So I don't know. Like if there's no money in the line, I can have fun with it and it is a fun time. But like,
I've seen people lose a lot of stuff, and I don't want to, And it's just more of my disposition. There are things I don't want to get involved in. And it's not, I don't care what you do. Like if that's your thing, dude, have that. It makes you happy. Everyone's got a hobby. And
but either way, they're going to make it into a show. I mean, I'll probably end up playing it. I mean, maybe I'll end up there at some point. I don't know. I'll just be the idiot who's like just cracking jokes and probably losing really badly.
My wife and I love Vegas. We go there, probably at least once a year, and I watch her gamble. She loves the slot machines, and I watch her lose a bunch of money, and I have a drink and watch her. I have my vice, she has hers, so so it works out fine.
No, but anyways, I forgot the whole reason we even brought that up. Oh yeah, just that
Clint Tower Gang, yeah.
Yes, that there probably likely will be, here in the future, especially as the show grows, might start doing more stuff here in Florida, more get-togethers, maybe start getting audiences involved because surprisingly we've developed because we've done I think 1 or 2 events now, and we've surprisingly developed a little bit of a local audience. It seems we've run into a few people. But anyways, I'm rambling now. I don't really. Point being is we definitely love to hang out. I think there might be some Tower Gang events in the future. The point I brought up with Clint is they might take our boy away from us, so that might throw it off a little bit. But we'll figure it out as we go. I mean, but I'm looking forward to the future. I think we've kind of really tackled most of it, unless there's other big stuff you want to hit on. Who else? I do want to know who all else have you given out these lecterns to? Other than, you know, I knew about the couple of Timcast writers, and then me, obviously, and you gave Clint one when we met up. Just what was it, Saturday, the other day?
Yeah.
You know, we met up at Dave Smith's thing. And you gave one to what, Josie there? Did you give one to Josie?
Josie got one as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So
who else?
so the criteria is it's different per person, right? And again, it's the whole concept where it's like, what are you doing in your space? And are you standing up? I will say the first person that got one was Chrissy Mayer. Do you know who she is?
Yeah, she's cool.
She's a comedian.
Female comedian, yeah.
She was actually there on January 6th. So she came up against a lot of stuff, like a ton of stuff. And she is she's I don't know what she is politically, but she's not shied away from it. She has leaned into it, and she'll talk to everyone. She'll talk to you whether you're transgender or gay, or she has porn stars on, but she's at least holding that basic conversation of, you know, can we talk about things were better before, or things can be better than what these parties are offering us? So she's kind of like that introductory, hey, these things need to be talked about. So Chrissy Mayer actually got the first one. One of her partners, Gary from Nerdrotic, also got one because he's also on that culture war front. He is talking about things that maybe people aren't really heavily involved in politics, you know, but they're kind of getting that spoon-fed information where, you know, holy cow, like this is happening, I don't like it, right? So he got one. Memers. So some of the very large meme pages, which I think are doing, I think the hardest work that is out there right now, that's been there. Yes, the Lord's work. Yeah. So let's see who got one. So Liberty Cap got one, or Liberty Cappy got one. Oh my gosh, what is this page? Sorry, there's been a lot so far. I actually have a flashcard with the names written down. Why don't you give me 2 seconds? Let me get it real quick. And
I do want to comment though. I just thought it was funny when I was thinking about this, like a little schizo part in my head when I like heard about this. My immediate thought was like, maybe he's a Fed collecting like addresses for all these people. I think I just blew your cover, but whatever.
I ask for PO boxes. I do. I'm like, don't give me your address. Like, find a local UPS store you can pick it up from. I don't.
We met in person, for people who are wondering about that theory.
Exactly.
You never insisted on my address, my mother's maiden name, anything like that. We met up somewhere. You handed it to me. He was not at all pushy. Like, where do you live?
Nope. So I typically send them to like UPS stores so you can pick them up. So like, I guess I know like relative location, but I mean, they could be visiting for a week. I don't know. I don't know. My attorneys got one each, actually. David Bigney and Dan Eckhart.
But it's useful when you pass it up the chain, because they can just conglomerate that information and make it work for them, you know?
Exactly. They can triangulate, I'm sure.
Like, well, the Hodge twins, they delivered it to here, so I think he's within this vicinity. All right, we'll go on.
My attorneys got a lectern each because the shit they went through representing me, they were getting death threats. People were saying they should have their licenses revoked. And they're like, no, he deserves representation. It's literally our job, and he has a right to have this. So each one of them got that. Dan Eckhart and Dave Bigney. My jiu-jitsu coach got one because when we were getting death threats, people were calling to like rape my children and wife while I was gone. I have stacks of letters that were written in. The guy who showed up was my jiu-jitsu coach, Sonny Parlin, and he came here, body armor, you know, AR-15, moved my family, took care of them. Like, that dude showed up. Like, he definitely earned one. Mm-hmm. And God, who else is there? Luke Rakowski got one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but he definitely deserves one. That guy is super based, you know, zero fucks.
Yeah, I've never really interacted with him. He wasn't there when I was there at Temple. I don't know. At some point I will. You know, but yeah, he's a cool guy. I've never really like. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've definitely had texts to disagree with him, but he always seemed like relatively all right, I guess.
Well, it's not based on whether I agree with you.
No, I get that. Yeah.
It's how much figurative damage are you doing to the narrative? Are you working to dismantle the system that is keeping us in captivity? And based on your level of interaction and understanding, if you are meeting that criteria, you're going to get one. And I can tell you that the next 10 that I built are not going to people that have massive followings, that have, these large accolades. They're people who have actually sacrificed their freedom, people who have been to prison, people who should not have been in prison, people who were wrongfully arrested, accused of things they did not do. The next 10 go to them.
Ooh, I think I have a good rabbit hole for you, and that might actually
Okay.
be a name on there. I have God. What
Yeah,
is it?
send it.
Well, I'll let the audience. It's a little bit of teaser, an upcoming episode. Next week I'll be recording with Ken Silva, who I've had on a few times, or a journalist. We're going to be talking about the death of Gordon Call, who, if that name rings a bell to you. He was kind of one of the OGs. Some people might even debate that he's kind of what kicked off the Patriot movement. That kind of is what led to sort of the, that's when we talk about Patriot movement, a lot of times we're talking about the roughly around the time around OKC, where there was a huge big,
not the Patriot Front.
No, not the Patriot Front, but kind of like a militia freedom kind of movement. Gordon Call was a big tax protester, and he ended up getting killed, basically murdered by the federal government over it. And there's still people that, I'm not going to attempt to try to, break down the whole story, because it's kind of a long story. But, his son, I think, is still in prison, Yuri Call.
Oh my God.
And he, because there was a whole thing. There was a shootout with police, and Yuri was there with his dad, and they hemmed these people up. I'll have to send you the documentary, because it's very interesting. And Yuri's still in prison, and it's he was supposed to have already gone out, but it's a good one. That'll be a lot of people will be interested in that episode that we'll talk about next week. I don't know if that'll be if we'll do it all in one episode or not, because there's a lot to it, but it's an interesting story. I just came upon it myself from Ken. So, but
prison release is interesting. So they have FSA credits, which is if you do programming and stuff, you get reduction on your time, right? But there's a cap on it. And then I can tell you people in prison loved Trump. Holy cow. Whether they were Democrat or conservative, because he put in this COVID act where basically if you were arrested for a non-violent crime, you can have a 50% reduction if you meet a list of criteria, right? So if you have high blood pressure or whatever. So he was basically emptying the prisons of people who should not have been in prison, right? Non-violent drug crimes or, fraud. Look, if they paid their fine and they've been in for 2 or 3 years, that is certainly enough. And whether we should arrest people for drugs or not that's a different story. I think no. If it's just specifically drugs, someone caught you, doing drugs or something, why are you in prison for that? You need rehab or something. It's not prison you need, because all it does is break up families.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. I've done a lot of talks on the proper legal theory. The problem is our legal theory is based on a punitive system, as opposed to recompense, or what, I don't know what the correct word I'm looking for, but the idea of it's essentially a legal a justice system based on property rights, as opposed to, because this is where a lot of people get confused, because with our constitutional rights, or what rights are. And at the end of the day, if you really understand rights, they all come back to or at least the most consistent conception of rights comes down to property rights. Because for example, you don't have the freedom of speech is just us explaining the idea that roughly you're usually able to speak. Now, now when people say freedom of speech, you're usually referring to the Bill of Rights, where that concept is supposed to be that this is applying to essentially areas within the state's power. But that doesn't mean say freedom of speech. That doesn't mean I can go to your house and say whatever I want, because property. And the idea with public property is okay, well, this is kind of what falls in the Bill of Rights. This is government stuff. So this is what governs the government. So people get confused when they talk about freedom of speech. What it comes down to is where are you able to do things? Are you in the right to do something? I'm kind of rambling, but
no,
there is no freedom of speech. The idea is you own yourself, and as such you command yourself. But now and you own yourself. Now if you go to someone else's place where they own, you have the right to kick me out. So technically I don't have a freedom of speech in that area. if that makes sense.
Sure.
But now, like a public area, like government land, that is governed by the Bill of Rights. If that makes sense. So the idea then becomes I have freedom. Like people get confused as like what freedom of speech is. This is why This is why I hate shit like human rights, trans rights, black rights, and even it kind of applies to constitutional rights or depending on how you understand them. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to property rights, and even then, there's a deeper discussion to be had there. But you get a little meta past that.
Well, okay, I want to pick your brain for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So none of us actually own property. We actually rent property from the government because taxes are forever on property. We're all renters.
I mean, I'm an anarchist. I'll go ahead and burst your bubble there. But
yeah, no. But
I'm an ergo-capitalist, so I don't think they have a proper property claim. Like they own it in the sense of like I'm the one with a gun and I will stop you from getting it back.
Yes,
but they don't morally, in the moral sense, they don't rightfully own it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a proper legal claim or
Agreed.
Legal or proper.
Agreed.
But
well,
yes, so
I think So this is where I'm at. So if just accept for a moment that we are all renting property, right? But you also want to maintain the right to, I can do what I want on my property. Even though I'm renting it, it's still technically my property.
Yeah.
That should also extend to your business, right? That you're renting from a landlord in a strip plaza, right? It should extend to your vehicle. And I think at least at some point to some bubble that surrounds you, maybe within 20 feet or something, right?
Maybe it depends.
Maybe,
maybe depends what you're talking about, I guess. But yeah.
So making cakes for weddings. Let's say you're renting a property. Where do you land on that?
Oh, I think like you shouldn't be made to do anything. Like I honestly am of the opinion if you have a business and you want to say I don't serve blacks or whatever, you should be legally allowed to. I think it's a really stupid business plan. but I don't think you're going to do really well unless you're in a very homogenous area. And it's like a thing that no one even really noticed because there aren't any black dudes around.
And there's also social consequence to doing that as well. So you deal with things on many levels. And I guess that's where I'm at, where I don't think the government needs to come in and have all of these adjustments in regular living. I think that maybe there's social consequence for being an asshole, and the world kind of corrects itself, so don't be an asshole.
I mean, obviously, if someone's like hurting people, essentially impeding on people's property, whether that be their own physical body, which is their property, or their items. I mean, unless it's that, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I mean, I know
in that case, they're being the asshole, so have at it. You also, but it's a full circle. You also maintain the right to be an asshole yourself.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, agreed. Yeah.
All right. Well, we droned off a little bit there. Let's go ahead and get out of here. I mean, we'll definitely have to do something again at some point. I could definitely talk to you some more. But I got to get to bed. I got some stuff I got to do too before I hit the bed. But what are you working on these days? Where can people find you? Do you have anything to plug? I know, aside from I know you're working your book, you gave your Twitter account, but I don't know if you have any other stuff you're doing right now.
That's it. I'm on Twitter at Lectern Leader. I'm the Lectern Guy. Have a lot of fun, lots of satire. Can't make any money right now, so don't send me anything. Don't offer me anything because I can't take it. Federal government still says 3.5 years till I can do anything with that. But
So send me money, and then I'll give it to him.
That guy.
I'm just admitting to illegal federal money laundering right here on the stream. Just kidding. Give me money. That's just a trick to give you to give me money.
Give me. Yeah.
But go on. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. Basically, all I'm doing these days is just trying to bring some awareness to a couple of things. Again, I'm new to the game. I'm not an expert in anything other than wanting to learn. So if you want to come on my journey and learn with me and just kind of figure out what's going on in the world and how we got here, come with me growing up. It'll be a good time.
Yeah. Well, it's been cool getting to know you. Really appreciate the little award you gave me. It's really surreal, weird, the world we live in. But if people want to check out more of my show, this is a No Way Jose show. You can find me on YouTube, all the major audio podcatchers, Odyssey as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Tower Gang Jose. I'm on Facebook as well if you want to follow me there. If you want to give me money, patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Appreciate you coming here, Adam, and then all you guys following. Thanks, everyone. And we are out.